Well, hello. This is Thalia with Fed Art and Creative Forces. I'm here today in my home in beautiful Oceanside, California, to talk to you about making a creature out of polymer clay. The word of the day today is armature. An armature is a support structure for a sculpture. Armatures can be either internal or external, but the armatures that we're going to be using today will all be internal. My mother, Susan Finson, has been working in sculpting with me for many years, and she will share some of her techniques with you for making creatures.
So I wanted to make sort of an emu, a fanciful emu, and I knew from past sad experiences that when you make something that has long legs, the legs tend to buckle, and there are various problems with creatures that have, like this kind of a body and long legs. So since he was going to be fanciful anyway, I thought, well, I'll just give him screws for legs.
Here are some of the really cool things my mom has made without the concept of armatures.
So limited in what
Yes,
I do.
don't do what she does.
Yeah,
Don't
don't ever do, for example.
No, she's got some great
don't
ideas.
Don't ever do this.
No, you could do that if you want to. In fact, you have my permission to make all of her work if you decide that that's what you want to do.
Well, what I do is I make little figures that usually have a low base of gravity, so that they're really easy.
Yeah, this is a good point. If you're not going to use an armature, you probably want to have something that's got a low center of gravity.
Yes. So and that's kind of what I've been doing for a long time, because I learned that when I tried to make long-legged things, a lot of times the legs buckled or they fell over. And today, one of the things that Thalia is going to teach us is how to avoid that problem.
This guy right here is my monster. I made him out of polymer clay, and the way that I made him so big with such a high center of gravity is that I used an armature. Now, polymer clay, cooking at 270 degrees, can be attached to itself regardless of its state. So, you can cook interior pieces and then add skin to those inner parts of your polymer clay sculpture. Having worked with ceramic clay a lot, which you can never do that sort of thing with, it was a revelation to me that I could cook part of the sculpture and then work on it and even add some more clay to it, and then cook it again, and the ultimate piece would be just fine. So it's actually kind of good for the polymer clay to be cooked this way, because if you've got a very thick piece of polymer clay, you would probably need to cook it for longer than it needs to cook in order to be completely cured. Like, the surface might end up a bit browned, and the interior might not be fully cured, and it would be more breakable because of that. So if you're going to make something big, I highly recommend cooking the interior parts and then recooking them with more pieces added, because it gives you a lot more freedom to work with what you're working on without destroying what you've already made. You can make something that's about the size of a little dog, but it has to have very thick legs, otherwise the legs will collapse. In any case, her dog is wonderful. My dinosaur is bigger. If you're gonna work bigger, you have to make bones. Now, you don't have to make complicated bones. They don't have to be like the real bones that would be inside a real animal. But if you're gonna make a sculpture that's pretty large, I would recommend using a wire. And you're gonna attach 2 bones for every leg or arm. So here, this is basically what I was cooking in the first step of making this guy. So I made an upper leg and a lower leg, and I made 4 of these that were about the same. Then I cooked them, and then I started to add the skin that's on this guy. An interior structure, which doesn't have to be made of polymer clay. It could be something hollow. It could be a piece of foam. Many things will work inside the polymer clay. You can attach them after you've made the bones for the limbs. Some of them, at least, like the foam. Having your bones on a wire is a great idea because you can then bend them, and if you leave a little separation there, you can make the knees later, but the two main connector parts are important. What you end up with is very durable, and its properties are ideal for making a maquette or even an ultimate complicated piece. But as long as you take them out and put them back in again, you can get all of the parts to be cured just right, and the parts on the inside won't get hot the second time that you're cooking it. So it'll stay cooler in there, and it's actually the best strategy I think that there is for making polymer clay pieces to pre-cook the parts. You know, for this guy here, I have this pterodactyl that you saw in the first video with the googly eyes. I think he's pretty good, you know, and I looked at a pterodactyl skeleton and I bent a wire. I have some wire here. I sent, those of you who've gotten the materials, I sent you a wire with your materials, but it's not very much wire. You might want to buy some more wire if you're serious about sculpting some larger things. This wire is not particularly thick, and it was fine for making this guy. And one thing that's kind of cool about it is that he's got a little hook on the back that I just built into his understructure. So you can hang him up, and that way he could be flying, you know, hanging from the ceiling, or he could be a Christmas tree ornament. And there are all sorts of possibilities if you're going to be hanging your piece. There are a lot of things you can do to frame your creature in the right way. For example, my snails, I've got a nail in the back of my snail. And if you put a nail in the back of your snail, he can climb up the wall. If you put a magnet in the back of your snail, he could live on your refrigerator. So it's good to contextualize these things in some way and to imagine where they're going to end up. I'm going to make an American snail. So I'm starting with some blue and white clay, and I'm rolling a tapered coil, and the tapered coil is going to be the basis of both of the parts of the snail. Now I'm going to take the thin end of the tapered coil and twist it around, as you can see here, into a spiral. And that's pretty much the whole story. Neat fact about snails, you can tell how old they are based on how many whorls they have in their shell. I'm going to make the body of my snail. So he's basically a slug. And what I do is I roll a tapered coil, and then on the thicker end of the tapered coil, I start pinching out the feelers, using only my fingers. A snail actually has 4 feelers, 2 on the top and 2 on the bottom. And these feelers can either be completely retracted, or they can be stuck out to various extents on either side, depending on what the snail is looking at. It's very bendy, just like polymer clay, so the snail works very well as an early project. You've got a lot of wiggle room. So there's the body of the snail. Here I am attaching a shell to the body of the snail. Try not to deform the shell while you're sticking it on. Just work it in with your fingertips. This concludes this week's episode of my polymer clay videos. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to make some of your own polymer clay creatures, or perhaps copy mine or my mom's. If you liked my video, or even if you didn't, please click like now.